Hello and welcome to this demonstration of MSI's new online vessel and fleet analytics platform, MSI SEASCAPE. SEASCAPE is underpinned by our own proprietary datasets on vessel trading patterns, fuel consumption and emissions estimates, and asset values, both in terms of fair market value and DCF value according to our own forecasts for vessel earnings and prices. Data is presented at differing levels of granularity depending on your selection criteria, whether it be a single asset, a small fleet of up to 200 ships, or a large fleet of over 200 ships. In this demonstration, I'll walk you through the 4 key functions contained in the platform according to your selection. First, for individual vessels. So there are 2 ways to look at a ship's information. One is to click on the vessel icon on the map, or the other one is to search for the ship's name in this search box. And once you click on the ship, it'll then load the vessel track. Now this track is showing from 1st of October 2024 up to today, 15th of October. Now the track is split into 2 parts. One is a solid line, which is the fully worked through track that MSI has gone through our full algorithm to fill in the data gaps, to extract the port calls, etc. And that is updated every month. And so from the last day of the previous month to today, there's a dotted track which just shows an update on the vessel's location. So it's a fully worked through track on a rolling 12-month basis with the latest data, latest daily location shown on this map. The time frame shown can be changed by moving the slider, and that can then narrow down some of the analysis that you're going to use the platform to do. So there are 4 functions though for SEASCAPE. The first is the MSI Activity section, and this then loads up that trading pattern for the ship, and there's extra information here on the speed distribution, geographical distribution, its operational profile, i.e. time spent at sea, anchored, manoeuvring, moored, and percentage spent in ballast. There's also on the right a list of KPIs, so the number of voyages undertaken by the vessel in the selected period, plus total distance, fuel consumed, and other KPIs listed here. If we go to deployment, then there's a bit more information on how the speed of the vessel has evolved over the selected period, and when it was in ballast or laden, and by how much. The port calls are listed, including time spent in port. Now MSI breaks down the port time by time spent at anchor, plus time moored, and time manoeuvring between those events. We also include estimates on the deadweight loaded. All this information is available to download into Excel if you right click and go to export. Information also includes the voyages, origin, destination, and in each voyage we have then data on the time spent in port, on voyage, the distance, and also estimates for voyage fuel consumption and emissions. We also have tracking of shipyard visits if the vessel had been in a shipyard. So this one did go to Zhoushan in March of this year, and it spent a total of 19 days in that shipyard. And there's also a list of stoppage events where the vessel stopped and how long it stopped for. Some of them can be obviously related to port calls and otherwise bunkering, other activities. And if it had been stopped near in a sanctioned area, that would then be flagged up in this location. Now MSI Horizon also runs analysis on cohort benchmarking. So first we have a cohort fleet selection, which puts together a list of similar ships by type, size and age, and these are the cohorts selected for this vessel. Again, this can all be exported into Excel. And then there's a comparison of the key metrics. So over that time period selected, how does this vessel compare against the cohort fleet? How is it deployed? Where is it deployed? How does it compare against similar vessels? How does its speed distribution compare against similar vessels? And also its port activity. So interestingly for this ship, you can see that 29% of its time at port calls was at anchor, whereas for its cohort, it's more like 50%. So this vessel over that period has had a, let's say, a more efficient visits to ports. So that's the activity data for this vessel. If we move on to the green aspects, this is tracking then the vessel's fuel consumption, emissions, its CII, and the projected CII based on its current or the last 12 months rolling fuel consumption and emissions and trading profile. So this vessel is currently in band C, and you can see how that's evolved over the past 12 months. And we can also get more data on those projections, not only for the CII score and banding, but also how it compares against the Poseidon principles trajectories as well. There's also cohort benchmarking again. So with the same cohort selection, how does the emissions for this ship compare against the cohort fleet? And if this vessel had been spending time in Europe, then you would have seen the emissions that qualify for ETS on a tank to weight basis and fuel EU on a well to weight basis. Moving on to asset values, this is the third component provided by MSI through MSI SEASCAPE, and this is providing a historical evolution of the value of this vessel. And if the vessel had been sold at some point, then this will show that transaction. So you can see this vessel actually was sold back in August at $55 million, slightly above the estimates through MSI's calculations. So these value estimates are through MSI's own desktop valuation service called FMV, and that's then pulled through into the SEASCAPE platform to provide this information. There's also a list of recent sales of similar ships to compare against that value with the actual price at sale. And then finally, the last function here provided is a DCF value. So this is based on MSI's forecasts for the asset, so earnings and operating costs and future value. So based on that data, we have a 5-year investment profile, and with a weighted average cost of capital of 9%, then the project DCF is $32 million. So that is less than the current fair market value of the asset, which shows MSI's cautious outlook for this vessel, most likely linked to a reduction in price due partly to a downwards correction in the shipbuilding market. Apart from these functions, then we have obviously the map tool here, which you can swap layers into satellite layers into just a standard graphic layer, and we can also provide a light or dark color scheme. So this helps with a little more granular investigations when you see ships doing perhaps some strange or different things. And there's also details on the ship itself including its owner, and we can move on and look at the owner when we get into the analysis for a fleet level. So moving on to the fleet analysis, then I can choose this owner, Shui Kissen, and then we can see that if I zoom back out and allow the tool to load, then we can see that the fleet of Shui Kissen is 189 ships covering 5 sectors. Now, since there are less than 200 ships, we do show some aggregated information for each of these functions. So if we go to MSI Activity, then not only do we have the same summaries by vessel that we've shown earlier for the single vessel analysis, there's also a fleet level analysis. So looking at of the fleet as a whole, of the container ships within this owner's portfolio, then that gives an average number of voyages per vessel, average distance. So this is all a kind of average KPI for the ships selected in container ships, bulkers, tankers, LNG, and car and truck. And again, the data here is dependent on that time frame that you select on the home screen. If you then move to the green section, then likewise you have the same by vessel information that we showed earlier, but there's also the fleet summary. So this is then pulling together information for the whole fleet. This provides a CII alignment. So this minus 7.1% is the difference to the fleet CII score against the reference CII score. So this is below the reference line, which means that this is better than a middle C, and also shows how this portfolio compares with the Poseidon Principles trajectories. Again, there's a lot of data here for the whole fleet that can be downloaded into Excel by right-click and export, and you can also expand these charts and take screen prints. In the value screen, again, we can click by vessel and go through each ship to see the monthly data as shown for a similar vessel for the single vessel output. But there's also the whole entire fleet is then laid out with its MSI's assessment for its current value. And likewise, DCF, we can provide this by asset output and also at a fleet level. Now, if we then select more than 200 ships, then we will end up with a fleet analysis, which is more of a high-level summary, and I'll show you that shortly. So to show you the summary output when more than 200 ships are selected, I'm going to show you that through this filter tool. So there's 2 ways to filter down the assets chosen for the analysis. One is to build a custom filter. So for instance, you can choose dry bulk ships of a certain size. So we can choose Cape size vessels between 180,000 and 210,000 deadweight. You can change year of delivery. You can drill down to different ice classes, geared, ungeared, different fuel systems. So LNG, dual fuel, conventional, draft. So you can really refine this fleet you want to choose. So I can choose this filter, Cape size dry bulk 180 to 212 to 110,000, and I can also choose to save this filter for myself to refer to in future, but also to my team, so for others in my company to be able to use this same filter, which can be helpful not only for these filters but also for portfolio selection. So if I just choose personal, you can also select a subset of owners. So you can actually choose, let's say you can build a competitor owner cohort where you can choose several owners and limit the types of ships shown, and you can see then those competitor cohorts. But let's save this filter and apply it, and that then has drilled down the analysis to 954 vessels. So these are Cape-size vessels between 180,000 and 210,000 deadweight. And if we go through the functions now, because there are more than 200 ships selected, we only get the chance to see summary data. So we have this then of that fleet. These are the average KPIs for the vessels chosen, and then this is the average geographical distribution and average operational phase by ship, average ballast ratio, etc. But there is no more detail at this level. If we go to green, then we have then what is the alignment to the CII reference line. Value, we have the total value for this fleet is $45.8 billion, and then MSI's DCF value is then slightly lower. So you can imagine if you built your own portfolio, let's say several owners of 400 ships, different sectors, then this would all appear in here. Now, of course, you can also change the date range of which builds into this data, and you can also refine the output. If we adjusted this to, let's say, vessels just built in 2022 onwards, then you'd find the number of ships would be below 200, and then you get into the fleet level output. So because you've selected less than 200 in your filter, then you get to see the fleet output and the total asset value list as shown in that level of output. So these filters are useful to really sort of narrow down a kind of search and analysis focus. And the second way to filter is through this portfolios, where you can either select ships and search for ships and add them to your portfolio, or you can upload a CSV file of IMO numbers, and that is one way of tracking a portfolio of ships that will not change over time. I hope this demonstration of MSI SEASCAPE has been useful. We are very much encouraging everyone to please provide feedback. We are constantly updating the system, and any ideas or requirements will be gratefully received. But please do get in contact if you have any further requests or questions. Thank you.